Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is episode number 209 of WP Watercooler. Today, we're talking about waking the WordPress REST API. That's how long we had to wait. We had to sit there and wait for the REST API to happen, and we're finally waking it up. I'm super excited to talk about this particular topic. So thank you all for being on today. Let's go around the room real quick and get everyone introduced. George, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I am George Stefanis. I work on Jetpack by day, WordPress core by night, and I am a co-organizer for the Lancaster, Pennsylvania WordPress meetup group / WordCamp Lancaster.
That's a cool hat. I want one.
Yes, it is.
Nice. Joe, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Joe. I'm one of the co-founders of HumanMade, and I'm also part of the WordPress REST API team. So I guess that's why I jumped on today, chat about that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. How about you, Josh?
Hi, I'm Josh Pollock. I am from CalderaWP. We make Caldera forms to drag and drop WordPress form builder, and I've written a lot about the REST API.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you on. How about you, Russ?
Hey, I'm Russ. I do things in Las Vegas with WordPress. I read a lot of Josh Pollock's articles about the WordPress REST API, and very excited. Ow!
Great. Good to have you on. What about you, Say? Tell us about yourself.
And I make WordPress, use WordPress, preach WordPress, teach WordPress at Say We Meet on all the things. And I have been interviewing people about the REST API for like a year. So I am excited because now people will give me different answers when they say that they're excited about something. Anyway.
Exactly. How about you, Steve?
I am Steve Zehngut. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup. And we will be meeting tonight at 7 p.m. in my office here in Huntington Beach.
Nice. I'll be streaming it live too, so make sure you go check that out.
I'll try not to say anything incriminating.
You can find me over on Jason Tucker on Twitter and jasontucker.us. And I, just like Say said, when we do interviews with folks about what's the most interesting thing that's going on in WordPress, they're all excited about the REST API, and they're hoping that it would actually happen sometime this decade. And it looks like it did, so we're all excited about it. So who wants to tell us a little bit about the REST API and like why is this so important for folks?
I vote Josh.
1, 2, 3, not it.
Josh, start reading one of your blog posts.
I think it's pretty exciting because I'm a plugin developer, and making APIs for sending data back and forth from the browser to WordPress is always this big challenge where you have to figure it out every damn time, whether that's to update posts or do something custom for your plugin. And the WordPress REST API gives us default routes for, hey, this is how you read or update a post or a user or whatever, and a simple, quick way to build your own APIs for your own plugin, site, themes, data. So as a developer, that's super exciting, and it's already starting to create core stuff that users could be excited about using.
Awesome. Why did it take so long? Why did it take so long for this to actually happen?
Well, I didn't realize we were going to talk about politics on this show.
I think we should. Why not?
My short version is, so it took about 4 or 5 years, I think, in total, from Ryan McHugh's first patch to kind of where it is now. But about 2 years ago, then it was kind of almost rebuilt with the intention of kind of like building an internal API to be able to build APIs on. So this isn't really just like an API for the WordPress data. It's a bit more meta than that. And that added a huge amount of effort because everything you then have to do, you need to make account for people using it in lots of different ways rather than just posts and comments and things like that. Then you have to think about everything in a much more abstract way. So there's that. There's also a good amount of politics and things in the WordPress ecosystem. People you have to get on board, things like that. Probably used to most of you I know. So that took quite a while. Also, there's like a kind of like, you know, energy from the team, I think, has kind of like gone up and gone down over the years as well. And that, like, obviously without energy from the core team, then like nothing's going to move forward. So I think this time we managed to get enough kind of momentum, I guess, to actually get there. But that accounts for a lot.
Also public demand.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, "What?
That's been there
Just
for quite
do
a long
it.
time, though.
Just can you do it?" Yeah, but it was getting like deafening. Like it was like, all right, we hear you. And it's like, oh no, okay, you guys are being really loud. You need to settle down.
I mean, honestly, a lot of it boils down to the fact that we're publishing a REST API for a quarter of the web. We need to do a lot of internal revisions to make sure we're doing it the right way, and not that we're going to ship it and then 9 months later say, oh, blast, we wish we would have done it this way instead. And then suddenly we're versioning things and people don't know what version they can rely on. We have a big responsibility to the whole entirety of the web to make sure that we do get it right. And I'm very confident that I think at this point that we have.
And because WordPress is not Google. Let's just be clear about taking care of its users.
I wasn't sure. Let's be clear about something else. It's not like it hasn't been available, right, up until now, right? So it's been available as a plugin if you elect to install it and use it. Now it's being built in. That's the big change.
Well, also, I think with Mullenweg leading 4.7, I think he was kind of the.
He's not.
Yeah, no, it's
Helen.
Sandy.
I thought he was running.
He did 4.6.
Oh, I thought he ran 4.7.
Yeah, he did. He just did one.
No, he didn't. He was going to do 4.7.
Oh yeah, I'm on factcheck.org right now, and
then I retract my previous statement. Go ahead, jerk. I thought for sure though, with somebody like with the Mullenweg leading that, saying, hey, with what we're doing with WooCommerce and how Jetpack is going into doing everything on their end, I really thought that there'd be a bigger call to use the REST API.
Well, there is, but
honestly,
it just has nothing to do with Mac.
Jetpack uses the core REST API.
It does, yeah. It's really
the
good.
infrastructure, yeah. There's there have been a fantastic amount of effort put in from varying plugins to build off of it. And I think that's the main two advantages that we're going to get from the core REST API over the months and years to come is convergence, which means that every plugin used to have its own like Ajax endpoint they would register. And then it was really hard to identify and for other folks to build off of. With everyone migrating to then use the core REST API endpoints for content management, you're going to have a lot more convergence where not everyone's making their own little endpoint, everyone's using the one common endpoint, which means that it's a lot easier.
Little endpoint, sing your own special song.
Once you have authentication rolled in, which is not coming out in 4.7, but it's still being worked on and iterated on. But once you have a common authentication method, something like Managed WP or Infinite WP or even WordPress.com can use the core REST API endpoints and then manage a lot of different sites from one central dashboard.
And I think that's the thing about this being merged into core is like, yes, you could use it as a plugin before, and thousands of people did do that, but that's very different to 25% of the web. And the authentication stuff will open that up even more. But this is, maybe the biggest or one of the bigger kind of like opening up to a big section of the web for people to use in a common way. So yes, you've been able to do that read only before in some ways like RSS and things. But this is must be one of the biggest, at least, kind of advances to allow people to do full read write for such a huge amount of websites.
I think it's really going to crack it open because there's so much going on with data exchanges these days. Everyone's, apps, everyone's super into it. And this is just going to make WordPress the easiest one, I think, for that, because it's already so user-friendly, so you don't have to worry about that part of it. So the data that you can get in can be pretty decent. And then, now you can do stuff with it, and it's standardized, and it's part of the core. And I just think that is just going to embolden so many people to do projects that were more complicated before that are now easier because of that workflow.
It's the last missing piece to really make WordPress a platform, right? So WordPress is now a platform, and as we're reviewing other platforms as we're developing things, we won't use another platform unless it has an API, right? So we need those APIs to get data in and out, right? Especially when it comes to mobile apps, right? That's the big change for us is we can now truly integrate a mobile app with with WordPress. In the past, we've had to build those systems, those middleware systems ourselves because it just didn't exist.
Well, especially if you're like, when you get into like migration or when you're trying to move things from one place to another place, like it was really difficult to try to marry those up and get everything together. Now we have something common to go around, and that's going to make our infrastructure easier to work with, which in turn should make everybody's infrastructure easier to work with.
Well, and
I expect to see it.
It helps with our. I was just going to piggyback on what Russ says. It helps with our perception as developers, right? So as WordPress developers, we're now developing on, I hate to put it this way, but a real platform, right? So we're taken seriously throughout the rest of the ecosystem, right? It's another missing piece. There's still a perception in the rest of the world that don't deal with WordPress that WordPress is a blogging platform, right? I still get those sort of sentiments from my new clients, and I have to explain what it can do. Now this is just another piece to make it. We're now the real deal.
The easiest way to solve that, Steve, is taking that off your website that says WordPress is just a blogging platform.
I don't. You know I don't lead with technology, but when we have to have those technology conversations with, say, an IT person, it's a difficult sale right now.
And honestly, as interoperability increases, the more we have JSON and REST as the common data structures and exchange methods, it's making it a lot easier for the front end to have no real interaction with the back end apart from the API. And that's what we really mean when we say WordPress is really becoming a platform, because someone could very easily, I'm expecting to see this happen a lot more, use WordPress not for the front end, not use a WordPress theme or anything, just use WordPress for user login, for storing your data structures, and then the front end can be built using Angular, Ember, React, whatever JavaScript library you want.
Everything out of it. And then you can use all of this. The user interface is, I think, what is the most revolutionary, has always been the most amazing thing about WordPress, because I still call it, when I do my beginning talks, I call it an FDI, which stands for Fancy Data Inputter, which is basically all that it is. And because you can customize the admin fully and user roles and all of that, so you have total control, that is like just the perfect interface that's pre-made, that doesn't require some developer to think about how lay people think, because it's already there. And then you just connect it up. And so this just makes, I feel like it just doubles down on how great and the longevity that WordPress has in front of it.
At that point, it's just a fancy interface layer between the actual web app and the database.
Good.
Well, yeah. And we need one. We have it. There is no standards. There are no standards, and it just provides something, and it's kind of beautiful.
And so I don't disagree with what people are saying when they're like, let's make apps, let's make decoupled front ends. Like, I want to make apps, I want to make decoupled front ends. But I think we miss the idea that, like, this is a developer tool that could make it easier to iterate on features in WordPress core, because you don't have to write the sort of the backend side. It's already there. Like, I want to do something cool to update posts. Like, there's no PHP code involved with that. And me as a plugin developer, once I have an API in a project, it speeds up my development really fast.
Absolutely.
And that's the stuff that's really cool. And because it's built around core authentication, there's nothing new there. Which I think was one of the core decisions, was not to add a new like parallel authentication system. And for me, as somebody who's like hacking out custom plugins for clients and building plugins for my own, like that's where it really accelerates things.
Well, I just want to touch on what George was saying. Like, there's been a lot of user cases where, like, we've had clients who they want to use WordPress as a back end, just as a back end, and they built something on the front, and going about that was this crazy build time of, like 6 months, or doing this, or trying to get this data, convert it and move it over. And I think when you look at custom client projects, they're always trying to do something that's not fitting inside of a box. And I think this will actually take those projects and help fit it more into that box than we've ever seen before.
I mean, take a look at, like I said, Jetpack. We integrated the REST API to make custom endpoints to give
Jetpack
on.
Man.
I know. Sorry, I work on it, but
it's a nice
cool thing is that
that's one of the cool things.
Now we're using the JSON API. API endpoints to tell you the status of all the modules in Jetpack. You can activate and deactivate them that way. It makes it much easier and quicker for us to iterate on the UI, as well as for if someone builds a mobile app that authenticates to WordPress, that mobile app can then use those same API endpoints to control Jetpack, to control Yoast SEO, to control WooCommerce, to do the exact same operations from your mobile phone as a native app.
So
that's the best side effect.
What do you guys know that is currently using this outside of Jetpack? That's publicly accessible and able to interact with your site remotely.
What do you mean, like another app?
You mean a client or a plugin that provides endpoints?
A client that's connecting to it and interacting with it using that REST API.
I have one actually. I'm building a mobile app called Vienna, which uses the WordPress REST API, so the core endpoints, which are essentially ones that have been merged in 4.7. It, as you'd expect, uses all of those. It doesn't nothing to do with the Jetpack stuff. But one quite interesting thing with that is with things like also that was merged into the latest round is the settings endpoints and also the post-meta endpoints. All of those are in the API quite dynamic. So it means that in the Vienna app, then I've been able to build UI to automatically render all of the settings. So even if you as a developer define a new setting in the backend, that automatically shows in the mobile app, and the same with post-meta and things like that. So my hope is, over the next year or two, more plugins add more endpoints in a somewhat standard readable way. If you've got a plugin that's going to add a post-meta box, you should also make sure your metadata is available via the API, allowing others to use it. So then for clients of any kind, or maybe specific tools you want to build on your site can make use of those. So I'm kind of hoping that plugin developers are going to jump on this and do API first, then build their stuff on it, but also allow other people to use it as well.
So what
that's
happens?
that's actually a really good question, though. What is that going to mean when this comes out? What is backwards compatibility going to look like? Is there going to be a lot of developers staying up late at night rewriting what they've already done, or is this going to be kind of a plug and play kind of thing?
So most of this stuff is more of a forwards compatibility thing, I guess, rather than backwards. Stuff is kind of added by developers to the REST API. It's a lot more difficult at the code level to kind of change existing stuff. So people that are relying on the REST API, the stuff they have now will always be there. It's just in 2 years, then there's also going to be things like widgets and menus and lots of other stuff as well. So it's more to make sure that stuff we do now doesn't impede future progress rather than being locked in now. I think we have a pretty good system of baking in, backwards compatibility via versioning. If we need to change design of things in the future, then we can. But broadly speaking, I think clients are going to want to best adapt to new stuff, but they don't have to. If you have written an app to list, let's just take the settings example. If your app just shows the available settings in the REST API, 10 settings or whatever, that's fine. That's all your app does. If that happens to be 20 settings down the road and your app doesn't integrate with them, then that's a shame. But it never did that in the first place, so I don't think you've really lost anything.
So what happens to the WordPress mobile app?
What has happened? They've been talking about improvements to that for a long time, but that hasn't been.
There's a team on it, working diligently. I'd say well. I think the WordPress. I'll give you my take on it. George may have a different opinion. I know he's obviously more on that side of things than me. I kind of see the WordPress mobile app, what we call the WordPress mobile app, to really, for want of a better term, to be kind of like a WordPress.com focused mobile app. Mm-hmm. So that's just to say, the features that it is really interested in is quite much blogging based. I think, we kind of consider, WordPress.com is quite blogging based, really. So. Unless they change direction, then most of the, if you connect Jetpack, the WordPress.com app to your WordPress site that doesn't have Jetpack, then you're really you only get one screen. You're only able to do a few things. And so I kind of see it as that's kind of the direction for that app, which I think is great. Mobile apps really should generally be a little more specific than we have the whole of WordPress right now. My Vienna app I see as more of a, more of an example of here's quite a meta app that allows you to edit all of the content in your WordPress site, I guess. But it doesn't really have, because of that, it's not able to have a very compelling kind of user story, I guess, of like what exactly am I doing with this app. Whereas the WordPress.com one does have that. It does encourage writing blog posts and things like that and the stats around them. So that's kind of my take, I guess, on where it falls.
So I guess that means that at some point here, we'll be able to actually interact with custom post types in, say, that app.
Yeah, so the app that I have, Vienna, does already work with custom post types and things like that. So because the API allows you to expose these things in a fairly abstract way, then like one post type is no more special than another. So if I register a post type called products or whatever, that has exactly the same weight and discoverability in the REST API as posts do. So to my client, then products are no more special than posts.
Nice.
I also think having like things like what Joe's building that are relatively simple and are on GitHub, it'll lead to a lot of forks of what Joe's building and what similar people are building. To say like, hey, I want to deliver an editor that's very specific to this site, or I want to fork it and make one that works just with my plugin and happens to have post editing as a side effect.
Yeah,
that's
a tremendously useful thing. If for no reason other than the majority of the folks that deal in the WordPress ecosystem were folks that are web developers. We're folks that know PHP, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, that sort of stuff. We're not folks that know Java and Objective-C. So to actually get folks that can build native mobile apps, you're largely pulling from a completely separate talent pool of folks that really don't care that much about WordPress as a project. So I mean, that's why I'm glad that like Automatic has invested and has a team that builds what, like as Joe said, is largely a WordPress.com mobile app, but also if you take WordPress.com completely out of the equation, it can connect directly to your .org site using the legacy XML RPC API, and hopefully as soon as this is publicly released and there's authentication methods and it can connect directly to a .org site, it's going to transition over to that model as well. So yeah, I would love to see.
Sorry, Karen.
Honestly, if there was another, personally, now this is not me as Automatic or anything, this is just personally, I would love to see the mobile apps for WordPress transition to something that the community around WordPress actually maintains. And I would love to see there be enough interest in that and enough effort in that, even if that means it winds up being like some React-powered thing in JavaScript, just because that's the language that people know.
Yeah, but I'd say even on that.
Question with that. Yeah.
I was going to say on the technology, you're right that like you don't really have a big crossover of Objective-C developers and people that are really passionate about WordPress. Like it's surprisingly true even for front-end JavaScript developers. Like what we're kind of hoping a lot of people will build really compelling experiences on the REST API, right? It unlocks the ability for you to use JavaScript in 2016 using things like React. Even there, you don't have a very big crossover. I'm hoping that obviously increases. Matt Mullenweg, even himself, has kind of tried to encourage everybody to go in that direction. But I do see that as a pretty big educational thing to solve, because we really need these different development communities mixing as well as much as we can in the whole WordPress ecosystem, because that's really when things will actually be built that are super cool. Like right now, me building a mobile app is like nice. But it can't really rely on the few people that are like so close to the center for that to be more scalable.
Well, I think it's appropriate to have someone like you actually doing that, because you're essentially scratching your own itch a little bit there. So it makes sense that at some point here, other people are going to look at this and say, you know what, I can do this as well. Which, Steve, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, we've got both disciplines on our staff here, right? So I've got WordPress talent, and we've got people who do Objective-C. There is a language that might bridge the gap in the future, and that's Swift, right? Swift was just open sourced by Apple, and it is being pushed to different platforms. It's going to take a while, so I don't know, but it is. Yeah, it's two different disciplines.
Well, we see the same thing with AppPresser. I mean, there's a lot of things that we keep building, that we keep trying to innovate, and I know we've committed a lot of changes to core to say, here's what we think we should be doing. And I think even plugins like AppPresser to help build a small little app for your site, I think even those are going to start become greater tools that people can start using to build on top of.
And there are other tools. It's been a while since I looked at AppPresser, but I know AppPresser was originally built on PhoneGap, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it still is, but PhoneGap's one of those tools that is sort of a crossover tool where you can use your web skills inside of a mobile app, right? There's another one called Titanium. Actually, it's now called Appcelerator, and then it's Cordova. So there are the tools where you can use your JavaScript skills inside of a mobile app to kind of bridge that gap.
It's probably worth mentioning on that one that so React Native kind of falls in that area, though it's that's how Vienna is built. Though that's actually the way that React Native works isn't a web wrapper using web technology. It's actually all native components, but you still write your apps in JavaScript as you would write React apps. So it's kind of like halfway between your kind of like Objective-C and your kind of Cordova approach to doing that. But yeah, it's the same idea, and that's just like you can take your knowledge as a JavaScript developer, and now you can apply that to writing native apps. So for me, that's been fantastic because I do a lot of JavaScript stuff. So I'm kind of I see a pretty big future, I guess, in mobile clients there. Swift is like good for Objective-C for the modern age maybe, but I don't know if I see there being as much crossover, I guess, with web programmers. There's some, but I think JavaScript gets as much further in that regard, which is
I think you're right. And when I was talking about Swift, I was really just quoting Apple. That's Apple's
always a safe thing to do.
That's Apple's vision of the world.
Wikipedia.
Right? Apple's vision of the world is that every kid right now is programming Swift.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're doing that. They are making that happen by inundating the schools with iPads.
Kind of.
No, not kind of. They are literally making it mandatory for kids in schools to have iPads, and they are.
I didn't know Apple had authority.
I'm familiar with playgrounds. I'm familiar with our
So Apple's giving the iPads to the schools. The schools are
not
into the curriculum.
They're not giving it.
I just checked Snopes, and I don't think that's true. But,
This is a real situation.
No, listen,
this is not made up or speculation.
There's a difference between programming and programming concepts, right? So Swift Playgrounds, Hour of Code, those are teaching programming concepts, right? It's and it is basically creating more coders in our future,
which is great.
Which is awesome. Yeah. But it's not the same.
I'm
saying separate from the coding, separate from Swift, Apple has been doing an extreme push into middle schools and high schools, particularly middle schools. And my nephew-in-law is required to have one in order to complete.
So I guess the thing is
wait, since we've got 2 minutes of tangent here, let me just talk about this.
Oh, I have a song to sing in our tangent. I wrote it, and I've been waiting this whole time patiently.
Here's my issue with this concept, right? I believe that everybody should have logic classes, but not everyone's a coder, right? And Apple believes that everybody at some point in their lives could be a coder. Not everybody's going to make a good coder.
I think a lot of schools are facing that problem where they don't have the capital to have to rebuild a computer classroom. I mean, like every 7 years.
Computer lab, right?
Every 7 years they have to replace their books, and I think they're kind of doing that with computers. So I think Apple and Google are just saying, here, why don't we, kind of like lease these out to you and get kids used to our platform, because down the road they're going to keep buying our product.
And I think especially if they're trained on them in a classroom, they're going to be part of they're just kids already inherently know how to use this stuff. But
I think that's different than saying. I think it's different than saying that we're going to.
Wait! I really want to sing my song about today before we're done. Okay, are you guys ready? And then you can.
I'd like to talk, please.
I thought you were just closing.
No.
Go.
No, it just sounds like at some point we're going to have to do this transition from doing mobile apps to have them interact directly with WordPress, and that's what we were talking about here, and getting Swift and getting all these things to end up communicating in a way that makes them all work.
What?
Well, you guys were just talking about this whole time about having Swift and having the WordPress websites, and then we got into this crazy tangent about schools and whatnot. So that's what I'm saying here.
Exactly what is the admin UI going to be fragmenting so much to the point where someone may know the app for WordPress, but you drop them in WP admin, they have no idea what's going on?
Oh, I don't know, WordPress.com. That's already a thing that is happening.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on
I
that?
can't figure out WordPress.com's admin dashboard situation. So I can't recommend people transfer now from .com to .org because it doesn't make any sense.
Admin, it's fine.
So it sounds like at some point here we're going to end up having a discussion where you can interact with your WordPress site through WordPress.com onto a WordPress.org self-hosted website, right?
What?
I just want to say my song. Can I just sing it and then we can be done?
Yeah, go for
Please,
it.
sing us out.
Right, ready? Let's talk about REST, baby. Let's talk about data that's free. Let's talk about all the endpoints and the routes from A to B. Let's talk about REST.
Jason,
Okay.
A little
You're
bit.
welcome.
Jason,
I love you
push the
all.
button.
All right, folks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.